the first move that was announced was the striker, Dejan Joveljic. And like I said, we'll talk to Edgar about him a little bit more, but he's only 25 years old. It's a 3-year designated player deal through 2027 with a club option for 2028. Last year, he had 21 goals and 8 assists across all competitions. That's and it includes 6 goals in the MLS Cup playoffs and the go-ahead winning goal in the MLS Cup final. So he's younger by 8 years than Alan Pulido, and his best season has already matched Alan Pulido's best season, if not exceeded it in terms of total goals. I mean, this is, and the total transfer fee for him in cash was the same amount of money that Alan Pulido made in a single year. I mean, this feels like it's a sort of a no-brainer if you look at it that way.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of No Other Pod. I'm Jimmy, as always, with my good buddy Daniel Kooser. What's going on, my friend?
My friend, how we doing? How we doing, my brother? I'm yeeting over here, dog. Stuff has happened. We were here to talk, and it's not like we have to scrounge for minerals to like find something shiny to talk about. It is shiny stuff is coming, and
couple things.
It's wild. A couple things. Literally, the weekend has been a little nuts. Mm-hmm. Your timeline might have been a little crazy. People are all of a sudden maybe excited to wear sporting colors again.
Feels that way.
Instead of being mad all the time, probably still saying Vermees out, like, oh, thanks for the signing, but Vermees out still.
Yeah, for sure.
But boy, what a day.
I mean, 3 huge signings that we're going to talk about, and this is one of the first times in a long time that signings were announced the day before we recorded, or the morning of, in the case of a couple of these signings, and not the next day. So that's good.
Looking out. Good looking out. I appreciate it.
And of course, we're going to talk about the signings. The big one, of course, being new designated player striker Dejan Joveljic. I think that one was a little bit of surprise that materialized over the last week. And a little bit later, we're going to be joined by Edgar Zuniga. He's a co-host of News Across the Galaxy, who covers LA Galaxy. We've been on his podcast before, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about Joveljic and what we can expect. Because I don't know about you, but when this rumor popped up from Tom Bogert last week, I was excited, and I was also like, okay, didn't expect this. Kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I when you said it to me, I know if you're excited, it's something to get excited about, because you don't. And I mean this in the best of ways. Like, you don't just get excited about small things. Like, it has to really be something substantial and have some meat on the bone for you to like blow me up with like 3 messages and be like, dude. And I'm like, yo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know if you're excited, I'm excited.
This was a big one. We'll talk about it for sure. Lots to break down there. Real interesting how he'll play with William Agata. So certainly a lot to talk about there. I would be remiss if I did not ask you, because we started with a little bit of eating on this podcast.
Oh boy.
What are your thoughts on the Royal Rumble?
Oh boy. I had a blast. I was like a kindergartner, just having a great time. I had to watch the rest of it the next morning because I had a show.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I was in my basement alone with all my lights turned up and everything, and just the ambiance at like 9 a.m. Had a great time. I was texting you. You had instant reactions coming my way.
Yeah. I think I have. I don't know if it's a hot take, and I reserve the right to walk this back. But I was sitting here thinking, I'm obviously not as seasoned of a wrestling fan as you are. You've been watching longer than I have. I've been watching pretty consistently for the last year or so, and off and on since the pandemic. I think the Royal Rumble might be my favorite PLE, more so than WrestleMania or SummerSlam.
You're not alone in that conversation. Like, there's a great contingency of people that feel the same way, and I'm one of them. Like, I was able to go to the one in St. Louis. I wish you were like more into wrestling. We could have like taken you with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, it would have been so fun. Because I think there's something about the unknown of who's going to come out next. You wait for that music to pop. There's just an excitement that yes, obviously they know what's going to happen, but like there's the feeling of like anything can happen. Who's going to make a return this year? I mean, I still occasionally, I didn't even watch this live, but I still occasionally go back and just watch the highlight video of Edge's return in the 2020 Royal Rumble, because when that music pops and people go crazy and he comes out, like there's some like real emotion there. And when sometimes when people make returns and you get that pop, it's pretty fun. So, you know, the big return this year, I guess, if there was one, at least on the women's side, was Alexa Bliss made her return after 2 full years being away.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Especially when they had all the news stories in the week leading up to it, like, well, they're in a contract dispute. You know, she was supposed to come back, but they're very far apart. Like they're not even close. And then of course you hear her music hit and she comes out and everyone goes crazy.
Can you imagine if sports treated us the way wrestling does? The freaking dirt sheets, as they call them. What if soccer? What if the soccer world was just like, oh, they're very, very far apart on agreement price with LA Galaxy for this new striker. It's just not going to happen. And then like less than 24 hours, boom, it happens. Like
the equivalent would even be like, you know, they say they're very far apart, then we don't hear anything, and then like the first game they're announcing the starting lineup, and then they're just like, and that striker. Dejan, or like what?
What a fun time, dude! I love that you're into wrestling, man. I don't have a ton of wrestling friends, so what a time!
Yeah. It's pretty fun. That ladder match between Cody and Kevin Owens, they looked like they were about to die.
I think we're going to die soon. Someone's dying tonight.
I sent it to you after, and it's hard to know now because everybody know. I mean, most people know now. If you throw up the X. Like that, historically, that means like we have a legitimate injury. Like this isn't.
I had to do that in a race when my wife broke her leg. I had to throw up the X.
Yeah, I mean that's how like historically the referees or whatnot would say like this isn't a bit, like we have an actual problem here.
For sure.
And so at the end, before Cody wins, he does the Alabama Slam, where he basically, for those who don't know, he like lifts Kevin Owens above his head and then throws him down on his back across a ladder that's set up between the announcer's table and the ring. So he slams through back of his head first, through this legitimate aluminum ladder that folds in on him, and he's just crunched up. And they all, you know, anytime you do a spot like that, they rush to see if you can squeeze your hand, and if you squeeze the ref's hand, it means you're good. Well, they zoomed out, and he's just laying there, which obviously you expect him to lay there. And then you see the GM, who's an on-screen character, but you see him, and this is why I'm not sure if it was a bit, threw up the X and kind of pushed one of the other people away. And then you see like a doctor kind of run in. I think for a minute they were legitimately concerned he might be actually hurt. And then they determined he's okay enough to at least get a couple more shots. But that looks scary.
Look, whose palms do we got to grease to get our own wrestling spinoff show here at KC Sports Network? This is good content, man. We could absolutely fill some time with it. But you know what? Everyone's like, oh, well, wrestling's scripted, right? And it's like, yeah. It's scripted for a grown man to go through a ladder, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. We plan it, but it's gonna freaking hurt.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. So it's had a good time watching it. Glad we did it.
Did you go to a party?
No, I stayed home. I got my dog. I actually have my dog right next to me right here, right now. So if she barks or comes on screen, I apologize. But she had her surgery on Thursday, so she's confined to really not being able to do anything. She was laying down. She just got up. Hopefully she'll lay back down and go back to sleep and not interrupt the podcast. But basically I have to keep her contained for the next 8 to 12 weeks and not jump, not really do anything. So
because the surgery happened? I guess
surgery past Thursday, yeah.
Fun time. Sad deal. Cry?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, everyone laughed. Jimmy's
no, she didn't know it. She didn't know what was happening. You take her back and you got to put her in the pen and then leave her there that day. And she doesn't understand why you're putting her in a cage and leaving her. So it was rough, but
bad deal, man. You're all she got. All she got.
I know. So hopefully she'll lay back down here in a second. She's got the silly cone on her head that she hates. So, you know, forgive me if she interrupts the podcast a couple times. That's why I'm in a different location. I'm sitting on a mattress of the floor of my living room, which is her recovery room right now, because she'd try to get out of her crate and hurt herself if I was doing it in my typical recording room. So
I just like that you got your AirPods in, man. That's the way to go.
I got my AirPods in, so it's a good time. Before we talk soccer stuff real quick, I have to ask as well, Did you watch the Grammys at all? Are you into the Grammys at all?
I am, very much so. I love it, man. Music's within my blood, dude. And that's literal because I have a music tattoo. But
Yeah.
it's just, I grew up around it, majored in it. I just love it. And so it was like one big freaking concert. Had a blast.
Oh, the performances were great. And but I think my favorite part is when Kendrick Lamar won 2 Grammys. He won Record of the Year and Song of the Year for Not Like Us. And the entire Crypto.com arena is sitting there all screaming in unison that Drake's a pedophile and screaming, "A minor." And I'm just like, this, I don't think anybody's ever lost a rap beef more than Drake has. And that includes people who have been literally murdered.
No diss track has ever won a fucking Grammy. Like, that's what's kind of crazy. And also, you got Beyonce's viral face at the end. Like, all shocked as she won Album of the Year. And I was shocked too, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it was fun. I saw someone post on Blue Sky. They were like, Drake has to sit here on the timeline and watch Beyonce and Taylor Swift vibe to a song calling him a pedophile while tens of thousands of people all scream it in unison. And we haven't even gotten to the Super Bowl yet.
Dude, and I stan Sabrina Carpenter so much. Like, it's not just because she's a pretty woman. She's hilarious. She's so funny. Very much so, dude. I remember I watched her on that show Girl Meets World when they tried to do a spin-off of Boy Meets World.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, this gal's got some comedy chops. And then all of a sudden, she's everywhere. And she was all over my feed last year. You know, I think I screwed my algorithm up. I was like, oh, more Sabrina Carpenter stuff. There we go. More Juno positions. How did this happen to me?
No, she was great. Doechii, the rapper, her performance was incredible.
See, people don't know much about Doechii. I'm like, you guys have been sleeping on Doechii, dude. It's
incredible performer, incredible lyricist. I think she won Best Rap Album, so pretty cool.
Big fan.
Fun times. Let's see here. Do you want to take our break real quick, and then we'll come back? We'll talk a little signings?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Buddy, I got my closing weekend of my play. And then it's my last time being active, and I'm going into surgery, my friend. Under the knife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How's that going around?
Marissa's going to have to put you in a crate and keep you contained.
You know, I like to think I'm a strong son of a bitch, but I don't know how I'm going to react. Never had surgery. I can just know
really
now. Yeah, I'm a very strong person, and I hope that I'll be strong afterwards.
You will be. I've had a couple surgeries. It's a weird experience. I mean, I think the weirdest thing is, you know, they're rolling you into the operating room, and like they give you some drugs ahead of time to kind of help you start to wind down, and then they put the mask on you, and then it's like, you know, seconds later you're gone, and then you wake up hours later, and like all this stuff has happened. So,
dude, we're going to talk. It's going to be like almost like half a day later because they're doing both hips, you know? I don't know how long I'm going to be under, but they're going to have me tranked like a freaking elephant. So, real excited about that.
Yeah, you'll get through it though. It'll be weird, but
you had surgery?
I've had 2 surgeries, yeah.
What have you?
Not in a while. I had to have a surgery when I was real little that I don't even remember. And then I had a surgery in college or freshman year of college, somewhere around there. I had lost a shit ton of weight. And like, once you lose that much weight, you know, sometimes there's just little bits of, you know, extra skin that you can't get rid of. So I had to have some of it removed around like sort of my abdomen area.
Oh, so you had like skin tuck or whatever removal.
What, I don't even know what it's called, but yeah, but basically because it was like you're never going to be able to sort of get rid of that at a certain point. So it wasn't like a major muscular surgery or anything.
Yeah.
No.
I'm not even here. I am thinking like I'm getting a whole new joint, for God's sakes. It's gonna be crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy.
You'll do great though. I have no doubt. You know, I'm sure you're gonna have to do PT and stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm all signed up for that. Real exciting.
You'll get through it. So
good.
Let's talk a little bit of soccer here before we're joined by Edgar. I think
he's on the way.
It's worth pointing out that Sporting did have another preseason game. We won't talk about it a ton.
Why is it worth it?
Loss to Charlotte. I mean, we scored a goal. Scored 2.
Ayo, scored 2 of them. That's more than the last 2 games.
It is. You know, one of them was a penalty, so it is what it is. But the highlight of the Mason Toy goal with the really the thing I want to focus on is this through ball from Jake Davis. Jake had a nice little steal, drove down the field, and then just an absolutely gorgeous ball to lead Mason Toye into the box, and then he slots it past the Charlotte keeper. Wouldn't mind seeing more of that. So
wouldn't mind
pretty cool. I mean, it's just
Jake, man.
Jake in the midfield. I saw a conversation happening on the Reddit where people were like, should he be at right back? Should he be at midfield? And I know reasonable people have differing opinions on this. Personally, I think 100% Jake has to be in the midfield. I think Kyrie, even if he's not an MLS all-star right back, has become a serviceable right back the more he's played the position. And I think Jake is truly an all-star caliber midfielder. So I think having, if we have a midfield this year that is our new designated player number 10, Manu Garcia, who we'll talk about, and then Jake Davis and Nemanja Radia, that's something. That's something to keep an eye on.
It's something. So, I mean, these are exciting pieces to a puzzle that we've been looking to complete for a few years now. I'm optimistic, my man. I'm feeling optimistic for the first time in a while.
For sure. There's things to get excited about. And I think, people who are, mad where all the signings, it's clear that Burns was overseas making things happen. And even when he wasn't overseas, they had people doing deals back here. This Joveljic signing is the first ever intra-league cash signing in MLS history. It's one of the new rules. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Just quick note, we haven't been able to watch any preseason games so far, but the team has announced that the next 2 preseason games, including tomorrow, February 5th at 5 p.m. Central Time against New York City FC, and then Sunday, February 9th at 1:30 p.m. against Minnesota United, are going to be streamed on Sporting KC's YouTube channel. So if you want to see some Sporting KC soccer tomorrow night, 5 p.m., it's your first chance. Get on there. Watch
Chula Valley International, baby.
Mm-hmm. Obviously,
on Super Bowl Sunday, they have one too.
They do, which is crazy. We're not going to see Manu Garcia or the new winger, Shapi Suleymanov. But Joveljic is already with the team, so we might see him. So
they just picked him up on the way. They're like, hey, we're in town. Want to come hang out?
We're in California.
Like,
come on down to Coachella.
I live here too.
Yeah. So pretty cool. But yeah.
You going to try to watch these?
Yeah, I will. Especially tomorrow night. I mean, I don't got anything else to do on a Wednesday night.
Wednesday night at 5? I mean, nothing on my calendar. I'm in.
Yeah. So it should be pretty good. So I'm looking forward to it. And then Sunday before, Super Bowl I think kicks off at 3:30 Central Time, something like that.
No, what? Super Bowl's at 5:30.
Is it 5:30? Oh, I'm thinking Pacific time.
Yeah,
3:30. So
the game will be done by the time Super Bowl's on. But,
yeah. So
just take a little break from your preseason or from your pregame coverage. It's there all day. Super Bowl Sunday. It's ridiculous.
Right. Nobody needs to watch 8 hours of pregame coverage. It just stresses me out.
But since since Chiefs are there, I will.
Yeah. I actually do get a kick out of the Super Bowl week, like Radio Row and all that stuff, because there's so many weird, crazy things happening in the media. They're asking crazy questions. It's just a media circus. I just think it's kind of funny how
it is.
I know KC Sports Network has sent people to Radio Row before. I'm not sure if we're there this time or not, but
I'm not sure.
For a three-peat, so it's should be good. They are there. Our producer says our good old friend Tucker and BJ are out there in New Orleans at Radio Row.
What a time.
I'm sure KC Sports Network will have you covered there for sure.
Love it.
But yeah, so the first move that was announced was the striker, Dejan Joveljic. And like I said, we'll talk to Edgar about him a little bit more, but he's only 25 years old. It's a 3-year designated player deal through 2027 with a club option for 2028. Last year, he had 21 goals and 8 assists across all competitions. That's and it includes 6 goals in the MLS Cup playoffs and the go-ahead winning goal in the MLS Cup final. So he's younger by 8 years than Alan Pulido, and his best season has already matched Alan Pulido's best season, if not exceeded it in terms of total goals. This is, and the total transfer fee for him in cash was the same amount of money that Alan Pulido made in a single year. I mean, this feels like it's a sort of a no-brainer if you look at it that way.
It feels okay. I feel safe.
It'll be super interesting. I mean, I don't know. Peter said that they'll maybe look at ways to be flexible, but a lot of people are big fans of William Agata, and this now gives Sporting options. I guess what I'll ask you before we talk to Edgar is, do you feel some people were questioning the wisdom of getting another designated player striker given how well Agata has played? But in my mind, at least, Agata had a broken leg a couple years ago. I know that's not a perpetual injury, and he's had some hot and cold streaks. I would much rather have 2 proven goal scorers than 1 and just hope.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. They're going to challenge each other, right? I mean, this sounds like our number 1 guy, but, Agata's right there, always very hungry. You've seen him. Mm-hmm. He could come on and provide a spark or come on and give him some rest. This is not a bad move, man. Or we play a little formation with both of them up there. I mean, there's experiments there, and Peter, I hope Peter's not being like lazy with his formations and stuff. I hope he's kind of licking his chops and thinking, I'd like to experiment a little more like I did last year a little bit with Alan and Willie.
For sure. I mean,
it's been fun.
Yeah, if you stick with the traditional 4-3-3, then there's going to be some rotation, which also it's good because there's CONCACAF Champions Cup coming up, so there's going to have to be some rotation. Mm-hmm. But you could do some things. I mean, maybe you throw Joveljic out on the wing if you want to get a little crazy. Maybe you play a 4-4-2 or a 4-1-3-2. Or there's all sorts of ways that you could get both Agata and Joveljic on the field while still using Shallowy or Eric Tommy or Suleimanov, who they all have midfield experience, not just wing experience, in sort of a hybrid midfield winger. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm interested. And then obviously the other additions that were just announced Monday morning is these were rumored. We talked about these last week, but Sporting KC officially acquired midfielder Manu Garcia and winger Shapi Suleimanov from RS Thessaloniki, from the Greek league. And Garcia, he's a designated player, 3-year contract through 27 with a club option for 28, just like Joveljic. And Suleimanov, it's a 2-year contract through 2026 with club options in both 27 and 28. So designated player number 10, designated player striker, a new winger. Eric Tommy's moving to the wing where he's been more successful historically. You still have William Agata. I mean, this is an entirely new, essentially rebuilt attack.
This is where we are, dude. Here, we were told it might not even, nothing's going to happen for a bit. And then this Allen deal happened, and it's like, hold on, maybe things can happen. And then here we are. Things are just accelerated. And Peter said they would be. And it's very exciting. I'm sure they're excited to get them integrated into the team ASAP, especially with Champions Cup here. I mean, our first leg is against Inter Miami, for God's sake. So real fun. A lot of fun coming at us.
And I don't know that I expect it, but Lionel Messi is technically on the Inter Miami CONCACAF Champions Cup roster that they published. So he could, in theory, play. I still wouldn't expect it if you're going to the game here in Kansas City, but you never know. We'll see.
I mean, you never know. I don't know, man. It's if the weather's like it has been these last couple of days, then that sounds great. But if it's like 20 degrees, which is really possible up until April, we don't know what we're going to get. But if it's like this, man, I could see him playing. Absolutely.
For sure. So there's questions, people have about why haven't we done anything on the defense yet? There are rumors about U22 players, a player, Brian Oko from Red Bull Salzburg. There's some trialists with the team, but we'll see. They said this will be a 3-window rebuild at least. And I think personally, we're farther along and we haven't even finished the first window than I thought we would be. So
I agree. Yeah. I'm having a lot of fun hearing things here, and I hope everyone else is too.
For sure. Let's take another break here real quick. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Edgar Zuniga, co-host of News Across the Galaxy. So we'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
All right, y'all. We are back, and we are happy to be joined by Edgar Zuniga, co-host of News Across the Galaxy. He covers the Los Angeles Galaxy out in California. spent a little time here in Kansas too. So he's a Rock Chalk fan, which might make some of our listeners happy. But Edgar, thank you so much for joining us. Happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate talking to you guys. I know we've worked in the past before, and whenever I get a chance to talk anything Kansas, it warms my heart because, like I said, a part of my life spent out there, and it means a lot to me. So much to the point that my fraternity brothers nicknamed me Kansas. So there you go.
There you go.
No,
Awesome.
nice.
Well, so we obviously have you on here because I guess if you asked me a week or two ago, I would say this is a little bit of a shock move that's happened. But Sporting Kansas City, in the first ever deal of its kind, an intra-league cash transaction, has acquired striker Dejan Joveljic from the LA Galaxy. He's now a designated player. He was a U22 signing for the Galaxy, a handful of years ago. But for those of our listeners who may not know much about Joveljic, can you tell them a little bit about him, his time with the Galaxy, and sort of what kind of player he is?
Yeah. I guess the first thing is just to get used to saying his name, right? Because just like at first you're like, how do you pronounce his name correctly? I would say like his first name is kind of like Deion Sanders, but it's Dejan. Yeah, Dejan. And his last name, he actually corrected people because for years we were saying it wrong. And then at the start of last season, he said, my last name is pronounced Joveljic. So I'm like, okay, Dejan Joveljic.
That's good to know. I've been saying it wrong this entire podcast.
Hey, we said it wrong for years, all right? But yeah, Dejan Joveljic. He when he first came out of the Galaxy, at first people didn't think too much about it, but then you saw Fabrizio Romano was actually announcing the transfer and you're like, wow, Fabrizio? He was actually elected the best young senior of the Red Star Belgrade in 2019. He was nominated for the Golden Boy Award in 2018. He scored 44 goals in 21 games for Red Star Belgrade U19s in 2018. So at one point, he was considered one of the Guardian's best young talents in world football next generation in 2016. So the guy had a pedigree before he even got to LA Galaxy. The thing that you'll notice about him almost right away is that he, if you want me to dive into like his pros and his cons if you want.
Yeah.
Sure, go for it.
He's very great imagination, very creative. One of the things that we loved about him was they're in a very like light LA Galaxy team that had maybe 1 or 2 stars. He began to shine because he would offer something different. He's the kind of guy that will create something out of seemingly nothing. And he has a very good creative flair. If you give him the space, he will be very creative, which is something interesting because a lot of times people just want that 9 who gets into the box and just is at the end of a series of passes. Whereas Joveljic, you can give him the ball practically anywhere in the attacking third and he'll figure out something to do with it. Now, was that what the LA Galaxy wanted? Not exactly, because when he first joined the team, they brought him in and he would come in as a sub for Chicharito. And then it was usually at the in the second half or towards the end of games where the score was usually decided and he would have more space to create and do things. Some of the stuff that sticks out in my mind was there was a game where there was a counter and him and Efrain Alvarez, who now plays for Club Tijuana, went on the break and Joveljic gets the ball. I think he launches it up into the sky and then he does a chilena, a scissor kick to get the ball into space to Efrain Alvarez. All he has to do is just run up to the goalkeeper and beat him on one-on-one. And everybody's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. That's incredible flair. And I mean, you guys should know what he can do because in one of the important matches last year, where you realize the LA Galaxy team was a bit different than it had been in the previous years, was the match against Kansas City, where Sporting went up 2-0. And LA Galaxy roared back to win that match. And who scored one of the important goals in that match was Dejan Joveljic. And so The one thing I will say about him was that for the longest time, he was floundering in a system that was made for Chicharito. Like I mentioned, being a guy who's a poacher, a guy who just waits for the pass, and that's not who he is, right? But that's what was being asked of him, and for a long time, he had a difficulty adjusting to that. The other thing was that when the LA Galaxy got Ricky Puig, he's a great talent, but it took a while to get him to adapt to Greg Vanny's system. And so when you had players like, for example, last season in Gabriel Peck, Joseph Paintsil, he really didn't use them that much because he still wanted to be the man, the hero. He wanted to carry the ball box to box. And in the end, in the middle of all this was Dejan Joveljic, like, hey, what about him? He's got to get fed too.
Yeah.
So it took a while for Dejan to fall into the system, and at the same time, on the other end, for Ricky Puig to also figure out a way to use Dejan Joveljic, because he had a very disappointing 2023. This was at a time when Chicharito was no longer a part of the LA Galaxy, and Joveljic was given the opportunity to step up and be the man who scores the goals, and he struggled mightily to make that happen. Obviously, LA Galaxy team had a lot of injuries, but in the end, he just didn't get the job done. So a lot of people were saying at the time, sell. I think like the Joveljic experiment, it's not going to work anymore. It just seems like we need a better forward. It's time to move on with him. But then he stayed with the LA Galaxy, and this season came around. Like I said, Ricky Puig had trouble adjusting. Then Ricky Puig got injured in the middle of the season. And when he came back, he saw that he had seen that the LA Galaxy players that had stepped in for him did well under Vanny's system. And so that's when Ricky Puig finally started to buy in. And so he started distributing the ball more to Peck and to Paintsil. And in the end, Dejan Joveljic started getting fed more. Now, granted, Joveljic did start the season on a 4-goal scoring streak, but he kind of tapered off in the middle of the season. But then once everybody got back together, he found his spot in that attacking offense. As the season wore on to the end, we started seeing flashes of that Dejan Joveljic from 2022, where he was getting the opportunity to be more creative and add more attacking flair. We saw him score a banger of a goal against LAFC that started that comeback against them in a traffic goal in September, where they gave him the ball in the 6. He was being guarded closely by 2 defenders, and then he did a quick spin to one side and then cut back to the other, left his guy in the ground, and scored a banger of a goal against Giroud. And then in the playoffs, he was invaluable. He scored a lot of goals in the playoffs. I think he scored like 6 goals, including one against Seattle that was when it sent Galaxy to MLS Cup final. And he scored the goal that started everything for them in the MLS Cup itself. And so at this point, people are like, wow, this was his redemption tour. He did fantastic. We expect so much more for him in the year to come. And
then he's sold.
He's gone.
So now he's gone.
Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but just give you an idea. It's just to give you the surface, right, about him.
You brought up the game against us last March, and I was ready to end this podcast right there because those are bad feelings, Edgar, bringing that up. And that was not a great time, not a great start to the season. I guess this kind of answers our next question. How liked was he by the fan base, and what was the overall feeling of him being sold?
People love him. It's one of those things where he's not just a figure on the field where you look at his numbers and you look at his performance and you say, I like this guy. I like the way he plays, or I like what he does. He scores goals, or he does this or that, because he's pretty active on social media. He has his Twitter, and I think he's also on Instagram, and he also a YouTube channel as well, in which he plays chess. And he is actually a chess master, and he is one of the highest ranked chess players in the world. And he will go to tournaments and he will actually perform well, and he'll post videos of himself playing with chess masters, and I think he is the highest ranked MLS player as far as chess is concerned. So you'll expect to see some of that content. He'll share some of that content about what he does on the side. So being a chess player, he's very cerebral, really smart guy, very approachable, always willing to sign autographs, take photos, just a friendly guy in general, very easy to talk to. And he's somebody that the fans grew to love immediately right away. The fact that he does something completely different from football, and he's playing chess, right? It just added that extra little wrinkle. And so a lot of people would nickname him the Bishop, and he has his own little logo. And we at our channel, News Across the Galaxy, we were playing around with the fact that he's this guy from Middle Eastern Europe, and we were making up Dejan Joveljic facts, kind of like Chuck Norris facts. We said something like, the day that Dejan Joveljic, left his parents' house, he told his dad, "Now you're the man of the house."
Nice, that's awesome. So it sounds like obviously, in 2024, he really came into his own. You kind of answered one of our questions where I was going to ask what was the difference about 24, but it sounds like it was getting used to being under Vandy's system, and then Ricky Puig really buying in. So he really, and especially coming off of the playoff run he had, 6 goals, 2 assists in the playoffs. Why did the Galaxy decide to move him now? Was this just a case of this was a really good return on their investment and it was too much money to pass up? Or what do you think is the reason that the Galaxy decided to let him go?
Yeah, this has been a very hot button topic over here because, MLS just has very strict cap restriction rules. And this is something that's been around forever. I've been following the league since the very beginning. And I remember when DC United became a quick dynasty and in those early years, every year you'd see MLS step in and shave off some of their talent, because this talking about those 96, 97 DC United teams were amazing. Particularly for the what MLS had to offer at the time. So MLS would take some of their talent and distribute it across the league. And it got to the point where after 98, 99, when they went to MLS Cup 4 years in a row, it got to the point where MLS just completely diluted all their talent across the league. And you knew right away, it's like, wow, it's very difficult to maintain, hegemony, remain competitive at that level for so long in MLS. And so when LA Galaxy began the season, it was with the understanding that they were going through a rebuilding process after 10 years of being under Chris Klein's rule as president, and how things were run into the ground pretty much as far as trying to provide entertainment at the expense of competitiveness, of putting together a championship team. You bring in big names, but you don't really focus too much on building a good team. Well, now you have Will Kuntz running things as general manager. So they started to put together all the pieces to make the team good. And LA Galaxy went from a team that we hoped would be in the playoffs to a team that actually won MLS Cup. So they're way ahead of the curve. And so MLS steps in and they're like, "Oh, you guys did good. Well, it's time to pay the price. You got to get rid of this guy. You got to get rid of this guy, and this guy." And it's something that we had discussed. Whereas we have felt the same if they had not won MLS Cup, if maybe they had a decent season, and then some of these guys had to move on because, like we said, we're in the middle of a rebuilding process. So obviously, the same people aren't going to be there from the beginning to the end, where they're trying to build something that's going to be long-standing. Well, some of those guys that got let go were guys that were very important in the building of this MLS Cup championship team. So every time you hear one of the guys leaving, it hurts. The one guy that we hadn't really expected to leave, at least this early, was Joveljic. Although I will say, because of everything that happened 2 seasons ago, one of the things that we were always discussing was, do we need a real proven striker, somebody who's much more consistent, who is much more reliable? And we saw, like I said, Joveljic have his redemption season where he began as somebody who was kind of like on the fence, whether, fans were like, okay, should we let him go? Should we keep him? And he wanted to have this amazing run. And all of a sudden you see the worth of this guy and what he can offer. So everybody was expecting him to be there, especially because LA Galaxy is about to embark on the CONCACAF Champions Cup run. And so you expect to have some of those pieces from that team still there. And I think the thing that bothers people the most is that every move they have made this offseason, they've had something or some kind of plan or somebody already in place that they know will fill in that slot. And at forward, all of a sudden the news, came around that Tigres of Liga MX was interested in Joveljic. And the question was like, okay, well, if they do let him go, who's going to step in? It surely can't be just Miguel Berry, right? We love Miguel Berry. He's a funny guy, but being funny doesn't score goals. And then it went from Tigres to Sporting in like 48 hours, and then he's gone. And everybody's like, whoa, what just happened? Oh my God. And then you look at the Galaxy and you're like, they don't have anybody to step in. And yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how they fill that slot. I mean, yeah, I understand, MLS roster rules are a little funky, so and maybe Joveljic wanted to be a designated player with the Galaxy, and they don't want to put that money in. So
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to mention that he's at the very end of his contract with the LA Galaxy. He was signed in as a U22 initiative player, and so you knew that as soon as his contract was going to be over, he's going to ask for, hey, I deserve something bigger. I deserve DP level money, because he provided DP level performance, especially towards the end of the season and in the playoffs. But Galaxy already has those slots filled. So what are you going to do? And do you expect him to say, yeah, I'll be back, under a lesser contract? No, at his age, he needs compensation and
lots of money.
And LA Galaxy, the cap rules make it very, very difficult and almost impossible for that to happen. So one of the things that LA Galaxy was always known for was that whenever a player departs, they do their best to make sure that player has a soft landing somewhere, that they take care of departing players. And in this case, Sporting needed a 9, and Galaxy sent them one, right? And they give him an opportunity to stay within the conference, so he doesn't have to move too far across the country with his family. His wife is pregnant. I mean, his girlfriend is pregnant right now, so he's about to start a family. And so it's at a very delicate moment in his career. He wants to make sure he can provide for his family, but at the same time remain very competitive. But then you have Galaxy fans that are like, but why do you have to send them to a conference opponent? Why do you have to help these guys when, they're getting better? They're suffering. Like with LAFC, they needed somebody to step in the middle, and then you send them Mark Delgado, and all of a sudden LAFC is like, yay, we got the guy we needed. And then Sporting needs a 9, and then you send them a 9, and then Galaxy fans are like, why are we helping these guys? They want to help us. So
you're right. Yeah. We would not help you, because we're under the impression that anytime you lose someone, you get someone of better or greater value immediately. Yeah, let's just keep reloading, man.
Yeah.
Quick question for you. The Coach Peter Vermees demands a ton out of his forwards, very much so in the defensive mindset. And he always says it starts at the top with defending. How can Joveljic live up to that expectation?
Well, that's the thing about Joveljic. He's very coachable. In 2022, when he first made his big splash, we did see him come back, hover around like the middle field, and when needed, he will run back and assist with the defense. Granted, that's not what you pay him to do, right? But he will jump in and help. He's not the fastest guy, but he's quick enough in the middle, in the open space out in the middle of the field, that he can come back, assist, trying to get the ball back, and then run back on a counter. Like I said, he's very creative in the wide open field. And so he's not like the most defensive minded person, but he's not going to just sit there and watch either. He will, if he's told, hey, go in there and try to assist, in getting the ball back, he will do that and try to get the ball back up the field.
We got time for one more question here. You've answered a lot of our questions, which we really appreciate. I think so. The thing that's so interesting to me about Dejan Joveljic, he's still young. He's only 25. And this last year he I was going to say matched, but really only matched in regular season play. He exceeded in total goals and assists Alan Pulido's best season that he ever had with Sporting Kansas City. And obviously Alan Pulido was a much more expensive signing and much older signing than Joveljic. But Sporting Kansas City are now in the midst of a rebuild. I mean, you talked about that the Galaxy were in the midst of a rebuild. It went faster than you thought. We can only hope the same may happen here in Kansas City. But we're in the midst of a rebuild, if we're being honest. Most of the players we have come to know and love got old and weren't doing it, and they have since moved on. How do you think, Joveljic being a young guy, a new designated player with great playoff success last year, how do you think that will translate to a team that, in all honesty, probably isn't going to compete for a championship this year? I mean, we talked last week, if we make the playoffs at all, that's a successful year this year, probably for Sporting Kansas City. So do you think that his experience and his success will translate to a team that's in the midst of a rebuild, that's still probably at least a year or two away from MLS Cup contention?
And that is a good question, because when he joined the team, like I said, the team was it was kind of tumultuous time for the LA Galaxy, and then there was the fan protest, and Klein was out of the team along with Jovan Karabsky, who was also an employee of the team. And then they brought in and they started restructuring everything, and it took a while, but Joveljic eventually found his spot, his role within the team, and it all seemed everything seemed to be going from kind of like rock bottom and working your way up. And so for him to have to reset and come into another situation where he's part of a rebuilding, we haven't seen anything similar to that. So here in LA with him. And now the one thing I'm concerned about for him, if I were Kansas City, was, do you have the people that are going to be able to feed him the ball or be able to get him the ball when he gets into a position where he can score a goal or create something? Because he doesn't just score goals. Like I said, he's very smart. He's a very cerebral guy. So he will find a way to get his teammates, the ball in situations. So he might, his first thinking might be, I'm going to score a goal, but I'm also going to try to find one of my teammates. Maybe it's cutting in from the corners.
Sure.
So the important thing is figuring out how he's going to figure into that attacking mindset. But he will get frustrated. And we've seen him get frustrated in situations where maybe the team isn't doing well at the end of a game, and he's subbed out, and maybe he feels like he has something else he can provide. And we've seen him get upset and yell at his teammates or yell at Greg Vanney. But you want somebody, you want a forward that's fiery and that wants to score goals, right? So you expect to see that. He's a very competitive guy. But overall, I'm very excited for him. I mean, taking off my LA Galaxy hat, right? I'm very excited for him. I feel like he's an opportunity to really make a name for himself. Having learned all these different lessons with the LA Galaxy over the last 2 seasons. And so I feel like maybe it's an opportunity for him to show that not only can he maintain that high level of scoring, but also be a leader of a sorts. Because at the end of 2022, the Serbian national team actually came to LA to play a friendly against the U.S., and he was called in to the national team. He started, and in the second half, he was given the captain's armband. Now,
wow.
Right now, of course, we're in the middle of World Cup qualifying, and with the expanded, window, I mean, everybody's invited pretty much. There's a good chance Serbia might end up in the World Cup. So this will be an opportunity for him to showcase his skills, his flexibility to that Serbian national team, and say, "Hey, look, I deserve to be on that team." Maybe even at a captain or sub-captain role. I'm part of a champion. Here I am in this other team, and I'm proving my worth. Look at me. So it's an exciting time for him.
Yeah. Maybe he'll even be able to play a World Cup game here in Kansas City. So it'd be pretty fun. Edgar, I think you answered all of our questions about Dejan Joveljic, and you've taught me how to pronounce his name better than I was in the first half of this podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sending such a quality player our way. And we'll surely talk to you again at some point in the future. But thank you so much, and I hope you and your family and everybody stay safe out in LA.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Where can people find you, by the way?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram as Edgar Nags. That's Edgar Nags. And yeah, I do cover LA Galaxy first, but I also constantly provide a lot of MLS coverage. And so you'll find me collaborating with different podcasters from across the league. And LA Galaxy MLS centric information. So
Cool.
Thank you guys for having me on again. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, rock chalk, baby.
Yes, sir. Well, there you go. Lots of information learned about how I now know how to pronounce Dejan Joveljic.
Little info for you, right? You got to put a little zhuzh on it, if you will. A little zhuzh, Joveljic.
Dejan Joveljic.
It feels good to say. Put it on a jersey for sure.
I think, the things that I took most from Edgar, a lot of great info, was that he can score goals, but he also, it sounds like Joveljic likes to sort of find space and help set up some teammates, which can be a good thing because Sporting certainly need that attacking spark. There have been some questions of can Joveljic do it without Gabriel Pack, without Ricky Puig, and Edgar said that's a question. But as we mentioned, new DP number 10 coming in, Eric Tommy on the wing, new winger, and Shoppy coming in. So here's hoping that, they'll be able to, it might take a couple months, I would say, to build the chemistry, but
who knows?
I mean, I had blocked out of my memory that Galaxy game where they stormed back.
I will never forget it. It was like March 14th or some shit. It was horrible time. I was like 2-0, we're up on these fools. Let's fucking go. And Galaxy was like, hold up, we're not done. Like, it was 2-0 at halftime, bro.
Yeah, it
Right?
was. I know. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, holy shit, I forgot about this game.
We thought we had it in the bag. Nope. 2-0 at halftime. What's that mean? They're going to score 3 goals in the second half and kill us right off the bat.
But you know what I think I'm actually most excited about? And it's interesting because I don't think Edgar was meaning to portray this as a negative, but he was basically just saying, like, he's a fiery guy. Like, sometimes he might get a little chippy. He might get mad if he gets subbed out. He might yell a little bit. And you know what? Based on what Peter Vermees said about what was missing on the team last year, that might be why Peter went after a guy like Joveljic. He needs a guy out there.
Someone like that in a while?
I mean, Johnny is the closest thing, but even Johnny, I think, over the last 2 years, just sort of was at a loss.
Roger at times.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think Johnny, I'll never forget that post-game presser when we were talking to Johnny, and he just goes like, I don't even know what to say anymore. Like, I don't know how to fix it. And it was like that fire inside of him just sort of like succumbed to the mediocrity of the team.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Johnny still isn't passionate and fiery, but like I think that's why it was time maybe for him to move on to another club. So having a younger guy who's as talented as Joveljic be able to come in and sort of have somebody who's not Peter Vermees try to light a fire under everybody else's ass, that's not a bad thing. I don't mind if a player gets feisty with his coach because he thinks he still has something to do out there on the field.
I don't mind it at all. I mean, there's respectful ways to be a fiery competitor. You know what I mean? If he's going to be a dick and call people names, then that's another story. But there's a good way to get mad about stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the closest person I think that we still have on the roster to somebody who gets a little fiery is maybe Eric Tommy, but it's like a very like German efficient spark. Like, he's not typically out there like getting in people's faces. He's just like, oh, I'm mad and I'm German. And yeah, that's kind of how it stays. So I don't know, man. I'm excited. I think this will be fascinating to see how Peter plays this one. So
also, I mean, Edgar seems like a great guy. Where'd you find him at, man? Just a really, really great dude.
Yeah, we just got connected on social media a while back, and I think I've gone on his podcast to talk sporting at times, and then he had spent some time in Kansas, so we've talked Kansas stuff, we've talked USC stuff. It's just a really decent person. So
he wants to hit me with that rock chalk, then he gets my follow on social media. You know what I mean? That's all you got to do for me to get my friendship.
He was actually
Corner of the Galaxy podcast.
News Across the Galaxy.
News Across the Galaxy. Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's he definitely check him out. He was actually the one who I didn't see the report from Tom at first. It was Edgar who messaged me and he was like, "You guys are getting Joveljic," and I was like, "Hold on, for real?" And then I went and looked and I started seeing Tom Bogert. So I was like, the guy knows his stuff because he was the one who told me first before I even saw Bogert say it.
Man.
So it's pretty good. So very grateful to Edgar for coming on. Check him out, follow his stuff. But yeah, man, I'm excited about this season. Like you said, this is sort of the first time in a while where I don't think this changes my expectations of the season. I still think making the playoffs is a successful year this year.
Oh, yes, 100%.
I do think there are some interesting parallels to when Joveljic joined the Galaxy, and there was fan protests going on, and there were in the midst of a rebuild, and then he still was able to weather the storm and get better and help them win an MLS Cup championship. And hopefully we can skip the fan protests and the dysfunction of the Chris Klein era of the Galaxy here, and we can just jump right into that rebuild and hopefully an MLS Cup championship here soon.
Love that. That'd be a great plan.
But that's about all I got this week for our good listeners. You got anything else?
That just sounds about it, man. Good signings. I mean, we get some preseason soccer streaming Wednesday and Sunday, so let's get it.
Should be pretty fun. Make sure you
I'm excited to go overboard and react irrationally to all of it, like we all like to do.
Maybe we'll get a
while
couple
speculate.
Dejan Joveljic bangers on Wednesday. We'll see.
Could you imagine?
I'm gonna lose my mind.
I will too. You know what, man? Give me that Serbia national team jersey. Let's get after it.
Can you imagine if he does make his way back and then he gets to play here at Arrowhead in the World Cup? That'd be kind of cool.
I mean, he's 25 years old. I mean, there's no reason he isn't. He's not like past his prime. You know what I mean? He's just trying to be a part of it. So
right. So should be cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. Excited to have some really fun, good, exciting news to talk about this week with Sporting Kansas City. But yeah, make sure you leave us that 5-star rating and review. Go check out Edgar at News Across the Galaxy. Make sure you follow us on social at NoOtherPod, at Dan Kooser, at JCMac03. Shoot us an email, nootherpod@gmail.com. And check us out on YouTube, KCSN Soccer, or via the Kansas City Sports Network app. But until next time, he's Dan, I'm Jimmy. We'll catch you all later. See ya.
Yeet.